Hilchas Avadim Perik Shishi. HaKosev get Shichr La'avdei, V'zika Le'be Ayidei Acher. So normally the way you Meshacher would be, you'd give it to him. Either you'd give it to him or you'd give it to a Shliach to give it to him. But here you gave it to someone in order, and that person should be Zeicher for the Eved. HaKosev get Shichr La'avdei, V'zika Le'be Ayidei Acher, V'amar Schei Beget Zeh, L'pleini Avdi. So the din is Yotze L'cheres, the Eved is Yetze L'cheres. Aval Pishlei Higia Get L'yodek, because Shezachon L'odem Shlei B'fonav. So there's a machlekes whether or not it's a schus for an Eved to go out L'cheres. This Rav Meir holds that since Avdi B'efkeren Nichalei, the Taish B'efkeren Nichalei means he wants to be mutter B'shivcha, which is a Chai Hefker. So therefore, becoming a Ben Chayrin is not a schus, and therefore you can't be Mezakim Ayidei Acher because it's a Choiva. Masha'inkin, the Rambam Paskin is not like Rav Meir, and he passes like the Chacham that hold that no, that it's a schus le'eved she'etzim tachaziyat l'rabbi, and memela. So therefore, there is a din of Zachan l'adam shlei b'fanav. And l'chura, since we're employing the din of Zachan l'adam shlei b'fanav, so the pastors, the Eved could come later and say, I don't want it. Whereas the only reason why it's considered that the Eved received it is because there was a din of schia. But every din of schia, you could always, the person that you're being zoich on his behalf, even if you're matana, whatever it is, a schus, but that person could always say, I don't want the Efshi, I'm not interested. And it's not a schus for a person to be forced to be able to be kind of something that doesn't want to be kind, like we learned. So Memela, so L'chura, the Rambam doesn't say it, but L'chura L'fiza, the Eved could be Meicham. Which really brings us back a little bit to the beginning of Perek Hay, which will go again. Over there's a din that someone could give money to the Adon, and through that, the Adon will be mishacher the Eved. And one of the ways of shikhr is kesef. So how does kesef work? So there's a way that the Eved gets money specially earmarked for this Indian to mishacher. The Rambam Pasuk that also works. Masha'in kain, if someone, there's another way where someone gives money to the Adon, and then through that the Adon is mishacher the Eved. Now the question is, could the Eved say I don't want it? So in the Pashas in Gemara Bemis in Rosh it's mavur clear in Kedushin that the Eved, it's not the choice of the Eved. It's not the choice of the Eved. In other words, someone gives money to the Adon that the Eved should go out free. So the shikhr is not really happening. It's not the pshat that person is working on behalf of the Eved. It's more like the Adon has a right to mishacher the Eved, but the Adon has to need a ma'asakina to mishacher the Eved. So he could give the Eved a shtar shikhr bal karchei. And if he was Mekabel Kesef for this Inyan, for the Eved to become a Shukhr, so that's like the Kinyan Kesef, and the Adon could be Meshacher the Eved, Balkarchi of the Eved. The fact that that person gave money for the Eved doesn't have to work with the din of Schiyah. That could work with the din, in other words, just to employ this Kinyan. The Kinyan is happening through the fact that the Adon received money for the Eved to go out Lecheres, and he was masking for it. And now the Eved goes out Lecheres, Balkarchi. That's how the Rosh says. That's l'chura also the Pashas Gemara, where the Gemara says over there that he's nikda bal karche, he's meshukher bal karche. In other words, the din of shikhr through kesef doesn't have to work necessarily midaiti of the Eved. But the mice is when the Rambam speaks about this din, the Rambam says that the reason why someone can give money to the Adon in order for the Adon to meshachrer him, also we employ the din of zachan l'adam shlei b'fanav. That's what the Rambam says in the beginning in Halacha Beis of Perek Hay. So from that, people are medayik that if that's the case, if we employ the din of zachin, so then he could be moich and say, listen, I don't want that money that you gave should be l'shem me. The whole reason you gave it for me was beside the din of zachin. He could be moich. So over there, there's a dion whether the money that's given to the Adon on behalf of the Eved has to work out the din of zachin. So the Rambam says zachin. The Rambam doesn't say that the Eved could be meicha, but the people are medayik. If the Rambam says zachin, so he could be so he could be meicha. The Rosh holds no, says beferish that he can't be meicha. It's clear that he can't be meicha. So you don't need the din of zachin. But over here, when you're giving it to someone else to be zoich the shtar on his behalf, so that's l'chura for sure. You employ the din of zachin. That's the sugyas hagemara. Whether or not we say over here zachin l'adam shlei b'fanav, whether it's a schus. That's the machlekes Rameh and the Tanakama. So Memela, so if that's the case, so l'chura papashtos, he could be meicha. I'm just saying, it's l'chura pashtos. That's what he said. He told him clearly, be zoich in this get on behalf of the Eved. Avadim Omar Tnu get zalavdi. He didn't say the lashon schei. He said Tnu. So then it's eini yochel azaveh. So here it's a din that on one hand the Adon can be chayzer because since he said Tnu, so it's 10 is kischi. So that tennis kischi has a din al kopanim that he can't be chayzer anymore. But on the other hand, which is really not so easy to understand. Whereas if he was zeich on behalf of the Eved, so the Eved was yotze lecheres. If he wasn't zeich on behalf of the Eved yet, because lepeil he wasn't zeich, the Eved is not meshucher, so why can't he be chayzer? What kind of sardin is that on one hand that the shliach was zeicha that causes that the odin can no longer be chayzer from the star, but on the other hand the Eved is not yotze l'shichr. So there's a ksos that says that it's a kilo al derech hatnai. That's kilo al derech hatnai. In other words, I'm giving to you now, and you're being mezaket to the Eved right now. But on the other, al menaz that it'll be a tnu. So there has to be a ma'isa of tnu. But once there's going to be a tnu, so then lemafrei it's going to be from now. But l'chura since sof kol sof you're still waiting for the tnai. So if you're still waiting for the tnai, so l'chura. So the question is, could he be mevatel the get lemafreya? Knows before the tnai was actually fulfilled. But I'll kopan, that's what it says in Ksos. Others say like that. That the pshat is that it's kilo that he was mezaketim al tnai that there'll be a mais in the sinah. Nochmal, aval amar tnu get zelavdi eine yochel arzubei v'li yotzo eved lecheres at sheyigia leget liyodi. So on one hand the odin can be chayzer, on the other hand the eved is not meshucher. And lefichach, since the eved is not meshucher, is the emer tnu get zelavdi umes is leyitno lacher misa, because since lepel is not meshucher until the nesina, and if he's already messed, so they can't be in the nesina anymore because it's ain't get lacher misa. So memela, so it's not going to work. But the mice is again, if it's going out, if according to the Ksos that it's a Tanai, and memela, so the Chura works l'mafreya. So l'mafreya, there was a mice in the Sina when the Odin was alive, and now there's a mice in the Sina. What do you need that the mice in the Sina should be when the Odin is alive? Just like we have in a get, if a person gives a get, all kinds of Tanoim, that you do l'mafreya b'chayim, and then the Tanai, the fulfillment of the Tanai could be l'achar misa. That's the Shaila that Achreinim is. They have a nozzle on the Ksos. So mainly you have to answer that there was a mice in the Nesina already, and it was Lamafreya, but it's a Bitnai that the Nesina later should be a Agetik in Nesina. These things that are hard to understand the Havanas Advar. Halacha Beis. Hakesef B'shtar Asisi Pleni Avdi Ben Chen. So if he writes Hariata Ben Chen, that's clearly you are becoming a Ben Chen. But here he writes Asisi Pleni Avdi. You know, it's Lashon Avar. Oy nasa pleni avdi ben chen. He became a ben chen. Oy harehu ben chen. So it's all speaking about not an act. It's talking about like a fact that harehu ben chen. Nevertheless, all of this is hareza yotzel lecheres. In other words, if he's writing, the writing is that he is a ben chen. So even though he's not like talking about you are becoming a chen, hareyad ben chen is not like an active way of saying it, but rather he's saying a fact about his status. But nevertheless, that's considered a proper star shikr. However, kosid b'shtar es and a ben chen is lashon asid means I will make you a ben chen is liyotze lecheres, because it doesn't say that he is a ben chen. It doesn't say that he is making him a ben chen. He says I will make you a ben chen. So he might make him a ben chen, but the value is not a ben chen. Halacha gimel ha'omer asisi pleni avdi ben chen. A person makes a statement asisi pleni avdi ben chen. V'hu emer, and the evidence tainig le'asani. I never received the star shikra. So the Chosheshin Shem Zikalei Yacher. It's possible that he was Zikalei Yacher. He's talking. So both of them are saying the truth. He's saying that Asisi ben Chayden because he was Zikalei Yacher, and he's saying Leasani because he never received it. But Lepel is Taka ben Chayden. That's din number one. Now there's another din. Omar Kasafti get Shikhr v'nosati le. In other words, he says clearly Kasafti get Shikhr not Zikab leYacher v'nosati le. V'hu Eimer le Kasav v'le Nosan. So we hear the din is Hadas Baldin K'me'edim. So the Hadas Baldin that the Eved is saying that he's Leasani. So we made that's Hadas Baldin K'me'edim, and therefore Vareza Eved Achi Shechran B'fanenu. Therefore he's considered an Eved. No, since he's saying Beferish Leasani, he was once an Eved and he's tying Leasani. So in the case where he said Leasani and that person is possible Zikalei the Acher, so we name on that it was Zikalei the Acher, or Choishin Shem Zikalei the Acher. Mashenkin in the case where he's tying that I gave it to you, and he's saying beferish I didn't get it, so then Hidas Baldin of the Eved is K'mei Edim, and therefore Harisa Eved Achi Shachran B'fanein. The Maisa is L'chura, the din of an Eved, and not an Eved, is to negate to two inyan. First of all, it's a moment is the Kashayla, whether the Odin has a right to be mishtabed with him, And then there's an Isser Shaila. Is the Eved Mutter Bascherin? Is he Mutter B'Shivcha? Is he Mutter Bascherin? In Israel? In other words, what kind of dinner does he have mitzad Hilchas Isser? So you have to understand really, in the beginning of the case, Asisi Pleni Avadim Ben Chein. He's come along and says, I made my Avadim Ben Chein. And the other one saying Le'asani. So a person is naman to say he made a Ben Chein because Lepeil, he is biyadi to make a Ben Chein. He's able to be Machshacharim. So Melo, just like when a person says Girashti Asishti, so he's biyadi Legarsha. So Aldera Zeh, Asisi Pleni Avadim Ben Chein, V'ueim Alea. So Lechura is biyadi to make him a Ben Chein. But on the other hand, he's tying Le'asani. So on that, the Rambam says, Choishish Shem Bezika Le'aydi Acher. Now the Lashon of the Rambam is Choishish. That's really Rambam's Lashon HaGemara. In Tesis over there, it says that the word Choishish doesn't really mean Choishish, it means Vadei. We know man bevadei that he's saying the truth. Rambam, it's hard to say that. I mean, the Lashon Rambam is Choishish. Rambam doesn't say that it's Vadei. But L'chura, that's the Pshat. He's Nama to say that Asisi Ben Chein. And Elamai, the Eved's being Makish. The Eved's Akosh is nothing because Lepel, he could have been Mezakamai the Acher. So therefore, we don't reckon Zach with the Akosh of the Eved. That's L'chura, the first halach. Even though the Rambam writes Choshishin, so L'chura, he has a din of a Ben Chein attack. He has a din of a Ben Chein that is Mutter Bas Chein. L'chura, that's the Pshat. Now, in the second case over there, there's Akosh from the Eved to him. He's timing that I wrote a get Shichrur and Menasatile, and he's saying Le Kasav Le Nasan. The Eved is saying Le Kasav Le Nasan. So the din is, since the Eved is being moided that he's an Eved, so therefore he's considered an Eved. Unless, since he was always an Eved, you have to understand, he's being made that he's not an Eved. He's being made that he is an Eved. But the Pale, he was an Eved, so therefore we say that he's considered an Eved. He does Baldin K'mei Edom Dami, and therefore the Eved is considered an Eved. Achi Shecharan B'fanenu. So the Churim B'tzad he does Baldin, we say good, he's an Eved. But what about B'tzad Hilchas Isser? Is he mutter b'shivcha? Is he mutter b'shivcha? No, he's saying that he's an Eved. But on the other hand, the Adam is saying that he was Meshacharim. So maybe he's also b'shivcha. Lepel originally, he was mutter b'shivcha. The Ram doesn't say clearly, but Negei L'chur, it's Negei also to Dini Isser, not only to Dini Mominus. Halacha Dalet. Mi shetziva b'shas misosei, that ploinis shivchasi al yishtabdu b'yorshai. Or she's my shivcha, but al yishtabdu b'yorshai. So the din is arezu shivcha k'shoisa. She remains a shivcha. He wasn't mitzavet to mishacher. But on the other hand, also liyorshim lishtabed bo. Mipnei shemitzvah lekayim divrei hames. There's a mitzvah lekayim divrei hames. Mainly he said al yishtabed bo, so it's also lishtabed bo. V'chein, if he said asul im omar asul lo keres ruach, he didn't say al yishtabed bo. He says asul lo keres ruach. So then it's koifnes hayorshim. And they could be mishtabed. There's different types of malachas which a shivcha could do. And the mela, normally the odin is the one that decides which malacha the shivcha should do. That's the schusim of the odin. But over here, since he said asul keres ruach, so therefore in asul keres ruach lies that lepel she should decide which malacha she'd rather do. Now, see how that's talking about. So you could say al yishtabdu, you could say asul keres ruach. Now the third case is what happens Tziva v'Amar Shachreru. He said clearly Mima Shachrer. So then it's Kefin is Hayorshim l'Shachreresu. He's forced the Yorshim l'Shachreresu, which over here is really a deal. B'chlal normally there's an Issa to Mishacher Evet Knaini or a Shivcha Knainis. Mitzad the din of Leila Bem Tavedu. So how could the mitzvah l'Kayim Divrei Hames force you to Mishacher an Evet Knaini or Shivcha Knainis? The Rambam Ha'aruch brings from the Aruch HaShulchan that he brings. There's a Ram that says that the Isul L'Shachar Eved is only if it's L'Seirach Eved. Mashenkin of L'Seirach Odin, there's no Isul L'Shachar Eved. That's the Aran. And Mela, based on that, we could assume that over here it's talking about that it's L'Seirach HaYorshim, the fact that he will be Meshachar, that they will be Meshachar, and therefore there's no Isur of L'Shachar. I mean, first of all, the Rambam doesn't really bring this din of the Ran. I mean, this din that you're allowed to be Meshachar Eved, if it's not L'Seirach of the Eved, but it's L'Seirach of the Odin, doesn't say that, in the Rambam doesn't bring such a din. And secondly, over here, it doesn't say that it's talking about that it was L'Tzeirach HaYorshim. I mean, it could be he wants to do L'Tevas HaShivcha. It doesn't really say this to say that that's Pshat Meram. So L'chur is Shver Taka. The L'chur, how is Kefin HaYorshim L'Shachreis, and Mitzad Mitzvah L'Kayim Divrei Hames. Generally, this is an Isra of being Meshachar and Eved. Halacha Hei. B'shisha dvarim shavin shechruri avodim l'giti noshim, u'b'sh'ar dvarim hareihin k'sh'ar kol shtaris. Now, giti noshim are the shtaris, which are not a moment is the kinyan. Whereas the Baal doesn't have a moment is the kinyan, the Isha, and when he's being Megarish, it's not a moment is the kedin, it's an Isser the kedin. But again, Eved, there's both in Yonim. On Eved, on one hand, so the Baal, when he's being Meshacher him, he's removing his Bailus Momenus on the Eved. Whereas the Odin had it was Kinyan Kaspe, and through the fact that he's being Meshacher him, he's taking away that Kinyan Kaspe. And it's also an Isser Dikek Shtar. Because Lepel, through this Shtar, he's becoming Mutter Bebascherin, he's becoming Osir B'Shivcha Knainis. So Shichruri Avadim, on one hand, is similar to a get in the fact that it's an Isser Dikek thing, and on the other hand, it's similar to a Mammon Dikazach, because Lepel, he's giving him, it's transferring his Dini Mammons. Is B'Shisha Nachama, B'Shisha Dvarim, Shavin Shichruri Avadim Ligiti Noshim. U'B'Shar Dvarim, Harein Kishar Kol Ashtaris, Ve'elohein, Ve'elohein Ashisha, these are the 6 things. First of all, Psulin Berkoi Shel Goyim. There's a musik of a star that was Oile Berkoi Shel Goyim, the Edom of Goyim, and it was in front of a Goyish Bezdin. But Lepel, since it's a Goyish Bezdin, it's a Bezdin that we know to be Erlicha people, so therefore they could be relied on. That's other stars. Masha'inkin, a get, and Alder El Zeh Shechuri Avadim, those stars have to be a proper star, and they have to make a Chales Kinyan, and therefore they can't be used stars that were Oilim Berkoi Shalakim, Ve'elo Hashisha, Psulim Berkoi Shel Goyim, stars which are Oilim Berkoi Shel Goyim cannot be used as a star get, or as a star of Shechuri Avadim, and also Uksheirim Be'et Kuti, the din is that an Eit Kuti, we're talking about in those times that a Kuti had a din of a Yisrael. The Rambam say Behemshech, that now Bisman Hazed, the Chazal instituted that a Kuti has din of a Goy. Masha'inkin, in that time, a Kuti had a din of a Yid, but on the other hand, he wasn't Naman as an Eid. And even if you have a Kuti Chaver, also he's not accepted as an Eid. B'negesh Arshtoris. By get, Iguna, they were makel that by a get, an Eid Kuti, one Eid Kuti, if he's an Eid Chaver, he should be used. And al derazeh shechruri avad miznachamo. So the first thing is psulim berkoi shalakum. Shtaya get and shtaya shtar shikr is psulim berkoi shalakum. And secondly, uksheirim beit kuti on eit kuti, that signs on this get would be kosher, a get or a shechruri avadim. It would be one eit kuti. A third thing is utzrichin ksiva l'shem ham mishtachrer. It should be atzmi, just like a get has to be written l'shmo. So al derazeh shechruri avadim has to be written l'shem ha'evet. And fourth, you can't write it b'mechuber. You have to write it on something that's tolish, as we'll learn b'hemshach. And fifth, that's a din the Rabbanon, that the Rabbanon instituted that the Eidia get is in chesmen elizebef nizeh, because there was a gzeira. Maybe he'll say kulchem ksevu, as we learned in Hilchas Gerushin. And that's the fifth thing. And echad gitinoshim. Then when a person brings a get from Dinas Hayam, or brings it from Eretz Yisrael to Dinas Hayam, so he has to say b'fanei nechtem, like we'll say b'hamshah. There are 6 things that Giti Noshim Shechruri Avadim have the same din, and that is that they're psul b'koi shalakum, and that 8 kuti would be kosher, and that you need a ksiva l'shmo, and you can't write it b'mechuber, and you have to be chais min edeim zeh b'fnei zeh, and also that Shavan L'Melech L'Mevi. And there are Taiches all of them. Ketzah. Kol Ashtar Se'ilim Birkoi Shalakum Ksherim. Klal Ashtar, which comes from a Goyish Bezdin, is kosher. B'cholat Noim Shom Mevarim B'Hilchas Halva, which B'Amis, it's really only Shtari Raya. The Shtari Kinyan are really not kosher. And L'chura, so L'chura over here, it's not really a special din of Giti Noshim Shechruri Avodim. Any Shtari Kinyan aren't kosher, L'chura, if they're Birkoi Shalakum. But I'll call upon him. Why is that considered from the Dvarim, which is Shavu Gitinosh Shechuri Avadim? Because all Shtari Kinyan is like that. But Kol HaShtoros Eilim Berkoi Shalakum Ksherim, Shel Goyim Ksherim, B'chol Atnoim Shal Mevarim B'Hilchas Halva, which is that it's not a Shtar Kinyan, and also that it's a Erkoi Shel Goyim, which are not Chosher to take Sheichad, and Chutz Megitinosh Shechuri Avadim. That's Uiz Gitayish, the first din. Then the second din was Kol Shtar Sheyesh Olav Afilo Eid Echad Kuti is possible. Regularly a star that has a 8 kuti is possible. Chutz Begiti Noshim V'Shechruri Avadim Shein Ksherim Be'eid Echad Yisrael Ve'eid Echad Kuti. If there's one Yid and one Kuti, it's kosher. That was Chacham didn't institute this takana b'negeya. They did institute that if they're both kutim, so it would also be possible. But if there's Eid Echad Kuti, Echad Yisrael is kosher. Abavu sheyeh kuti chaver. That's only betnai that the kuti was a chaver. If the kuti wasn't a chaver, so then he's tak apostle, even by Gidin Noshim v'shechrui avodim. Masha'enki by other stars, even if he's a chaver, he's also apostle. Now, bizman hazeh shakutim kegoyim. Later on, when they saw that the kutim were evdi avidazara, so then they instituted that the kutim have a din of goyim l'chol devreim. So we made l'chura this din that a get or a shtachir shikhr that has an eight kuti is kosher is no longer there bizman hazeh, because now the kuti has a din of a goy. Aber von deswegen on the made the mehem tzdukim. In other words, this din could be used for tzdukim bizman hazeh. But shat tzdukim bizman hazeh can make kuti be'esi hazman kedim shekodmu aleim sheyu goyim l'chol devreim. In other words, what kind of halacha lemaisa do we have from the fact that kol ha'shtaris which have a kuti is possible, except for a get isha and a shtar shichr, which over there, if it has an eight kuti is kosher, the eight kuti is bizman hazeh eight kuti would be possible. But bizman hazeh, if you have a tzduki signed on a shtar, so if you have a tzduki signed on a shtar, it would be possible. Mashenkin, if you have one tzduki signed on a shtar, a get shikhr, a get isha, or a shtar shikhr, together with a yid, or regular yid, not a tzduki, so then it's kosher. That's the special din that we learned from this kuti. Kuti we're using for a tzduki. That's din number one. So that was din number two. Then the Rambam continues, beget isha hu eimer v'kos of law. So from the word v'kos of law, we learn out lishma. And the beget shikhr is also eimer a chufshen l'nitn law. So we learn out sheyichtav lishma. And the pashtos l'chur the Lashon Rambam and others learn that it's, and that's pashtos in Gemara that we learn out of Gzeir Shava lo meisha. That lo meisha we learn out that you need to have lishma, and al derech that you can't have that it should be written b'mechuber. But from the Lashon Rambam seems to be that it's the same, just like over here it says because of law. So b'shikhr u'emer echuf shel nitnu law. So the word law, it says le nitnu law. So actually yichtav lishma. And then beget isha u'emer v'kos of v'nosa. So we learn now mishein mechusar el nesina. So it has to be v'kos of v'nosa from the ksiva you're able to have the nesina, and you don't have to have in between the ksiva and the nesina and the titza to pull it off. Yotza kesim b'mechuber v'achar kach kotzetz shari mechutzer tzitzu nesina. It's not v'kos of v'nosa, but it's v'kosa v'kotzetz v'nosa. That's the raya by get isha that in case you get isha b'mechuber l'karka. Now, but again, get shichru eimer also nitnu law. So we learn out le'yemachusar el nesina. So again, the Rambam doesn't seem to be saying that it's exer shava lo meisha. That we're learning out the dinam of isha from the dinam from isha. We're learning out l'gabi shtar shichru. That's the way the pashtus would be learned. In other words, by isha it says v'kosav lo l'shmo. So the word law is behemshech to v'kosav, and it also says v'kosav v'nosam. So we learn out that there shouldn't be mechusar tzitza between the ksiva and the nesina, and it says because of law, and over there it says a chuf shel nitnu law. So we learn at law meisha that it has to be written l'shma, and also that it shouldn't be mechusar tzitza. That would be the pashtus advarim. But masha'inket from the Lashon Rambam, it seems like that there's an extra limud sai b'negei shtar shikhr that it has to be l'shma, and sai b'negei shtar shikhr that it shouldn't be mechusar tzitza. Le'yemechusar el nesina. That's nachadin. Then it says, "Echad gitinoshim echad shechrui avadim, ein choismen eideim elazeh b'fnei Kfar biyarnu tam adam b'ilchas gerishin. B'ilchas gerishin, the Ram explains that we're afraid that maybe the Baal will tell a number of eidim, the kulchem chismu get liishti. So Mela was kilo a tnai that the get is only a get if it's kulchem chsemu. And lepel, if they'll be signing zev shlei b'fnei zeh, so they may end up not all of them signing together, and therefore it'll come out that she'll have receive a get, assuming that this get is a proper get. In reality, it's not a proper get. So therefore, Chazal instituted that when Edom were authorized to sign, it has to be kulchem chismu zeh b'fnei. It has to be that they always sign zeh b'fnei zeh. So Mela should never have this problem in the case of kulchem chsemu. And al derech zeh b'negei shtar shikhr, because the same thing would be a shtar shikhr if he said kulchem chsemu and lepel they didn't all sign. So Mela is not really meshukhr, and he'll think he's meshukhr. So that was the 5 things that we learned already. Then the keitza halacha zayin. The keitza shavim b'melech u'b'mevi. What's the shavim b'melech u'b'mevi? Shamevi get shikhr be'eretz Yisrael. A person that brings a get shikhr in Eretz Yisrael is ein tzarech leimer b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. There's no need to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. However, or b'chutz laretz, if a person brings a get b'chutz laretz, im ein edim etzuyin l'kaim. So if you have edim which are there, that could be mekayim the shtar, so that's no problem. So right now you can mekayim the shtar. However, v'im ein edim etzuyin l'kaim, if there's no edim etzuyin l'kaim, v'omer hashliach b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, zehu kiyumei. That's his kiyum. V'im bo ha'odin v'irir achar kach ein b'mashgichen bei k'meshe b'yarnu b'kitin noshim. Now the Maisa is that the way the Rambam says this din is a little bit tzarech birer, because l'chura the ikar din is that a person brings a get to chutz laretz, from chutz laretz, so they're mechuyev to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, and if they don't say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, you're not allowed to really give the get, and you can't give the get. So alepel, if you do say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, so even in Eretz Yisrael it helps that later on if the Baal is ma'arer, we don't listen to the Baal's ear. So it sounds like that the chiluk is nachmal. Maybe he gets shikhr be'eretz Yisrael. Ain't tzarich leim b'fanei nechtam. He's not mechuyev to say. But b'chutz laretz, the Rambam is not saying b'chutz laretz he has to say. B'chutz laretz, im ein edim mitzuyin l'kaimei v'omer hashliach b'fanei nechtam zeu kiyumei. That din that im omer hashliach b'fanei nechtam zeu kiyumei, that's in Eretz Yisrael also. That din is in Eretz Yisrael. The din between Eretz Yisrael and chutz laretz, that in Eretz Yisrael there's ein tzarich leimar. In ein tzarich leimar b'chutz laretz he has to say. But lapel, if he did say, so in both places zeu kiyumis. In the Rambam, it sounds like this din that zeu kiyumis is only in chutz laretz, but the Rambam said clearly in Hilchis Gerushin that even in Eretz Yisrael it's also zeu kiyumis. That's din. Shame that's din number. So that's the din of shavan l'melech l'mevi. So that the pashtus means that you mechuyev to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam when you bring a get from chutz laretz. So when you bring a get from chutz laretz, you have to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, and as a result of saying b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, so memela the Baal, even the Baal or the Adna will be ma'arer. We won't be choishish for his error. Yeah. Then the Rambam continues: Kshem sheisha atzma mevio gita ve'eina tzarech l'kaimei hail v'aget yetzim b'tachas yoda. So just like when a woman comes along and she has already a get in her hand, so the Rambam holds that there's no need for kiyum. There's no need for kiyum. If a woman has a get, there's no need for kiyum. It's just if the Baal is ma'arer, then you have to be mekayim the get. If a shliach is bringing a get memdinas hayam, so then there's a need to be mekayim the get. But stamazeh, if a woman comes from chutz laretz even and she has a get, she's not mechuyev to be mekayim in order to get married. Is kacho evet sheshtar shichru yetzim tachas yodei is eina tzarech l'kaimei. There's no need for him to be mekayim the shtar shichru. So Mele, if he has the shtar shichrus and the saraya that he was meshuchrer, so Mele he's mutiv mascher. Kshem sheisha imeres b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam im hisno lek mishabarad b'mkemei. There's a hechatimtza of a woman coming along with her get and saying b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. But that's in the case where she received the get from the husband, and the husband said b'feidish she shouldn't get divorced yet. In other words, if he gave her the get already and she's already gureshes, so there's no musik of saying b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. Masha'inkin, if he gave her the get and he told her that she shouldn't become megurish until she comes until here and here, and then she should give the get to Bezdin, and Bezdin will give the get to her, be mannered to give the get to her. So then, and at that point, when she gives it over to Bezdin, that's when she says b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, and she only becomes megureshes when she gets the get back. So then, in his no luck, mishabarad b'mkemei, so that she could say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam is kacha evet shehevi get. He brought a shtar shichr v'amar b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam is also naman alei derech, and then ve'eina tzarech kiyum. So there's a chetimsa of a woman saying about her own get b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, and as a result of that, the Baal is no longer naman to be ma'arer, and al derech zeh there's a chetimsa of an evet saying about his own shtar shichr b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam, and as a result of that, the Odin is no longer able to be ma'arer. Halacha ches. Kol ha-kosher lahavi get to isha. If a person is kosher to bring a get to isha, is also kosher lahavi get to evet. He's also kosher to bring a shtar shichr. In other words, to bring it's not everyone that's kosher to bring a shtar shichr is kosher to bring a get to isha, because a shtar shichr could be brought through an evet. An evet could be a shliach to bring a get to another evet. And Memela, but an Eved can't be a Shliach to bring a get to an Isha, because since he's Eine B'Teres Gittin Kedushin, so therefore he can't be a Shliach to bring a get to another Isha. Masha'inkin, the other way, Kol HaKosher L'Havi Get to Isha, anyone that's Kosher L'Havi Get to Isha, which excludes a Cheresh and a Shaitan, a Cotton, those people aren't Kosher. But Kol HaKosher L'Havi Get to Isha, all regular people that are Kosher L'Havi Get to Isha, is also Kosher L'Havi Get to Eved. Then there's a din for Eved is also Mikabel Get L'Chaveri, Miyad Rabbi Shel Chaveri. An Eved could be the recipient, he could be Zoicha in a get for someone, for another Eved. Knows, but he can't be, knows, if there's two Avadim that are Avadim of the same Odin, so one Eved can't be Zoicha for the other Eved. And the reason for it is, just like a person can't pick up his own item and make a Maisakinya for someone else, because when you pick up your own item, so you're not doing a Maisakinya, that's not a Maisakinya. Maisakinya means picking up an item which is not yours. When you pick up an item that's yours, so that's not a Maisakinya, so that can't work for someone else. So al derech zeh, when the Eved picks up the get, and the get is from his Odin to another Eved of his own Odin, so it's kilo, the Odin is picking up his own get, like the Odin is picking up the get to be Zeich on behalf of another Eved. That wouldn't work. So he says, V'Eved, if an Eved, L'mashal, Reuven has one Eved, and Shimon has another Eved, and Lepel, Reuven wants to Meshacher his Eved, and he gives it to Shimon's Eved, that Shimon's Eved should be Zeicha for Reuven's Eved. That's Beseder, that's he's saying. For Eved, Mekabel get L'Chaveri, one Eved can be Mekabel a get for another Eved, Miyad Rabbi Shel Chaveri, from the Rabbi Shel Chaveri, Avalei Miyad Rabbi Shel Mekabel. But the Rabbi Shel Mekabel, he can't, knows, if it's his own Eved, Reuven has two Avadim, and one Eved is going to be Zeicha in the get for the other Eved, so it was never Yetzer B'tachas Yodi. It knows it's Kilo, like Reuven himself is picking it up to be Zeicha for the Eved, which wouldn't work. Halach HaKoisev Shtar Eres L'Shivchase, a person that writes a Shtar Eres L'Shivchase. The person has a Shivcha, he wants to be Meshacher her, and he also wants to marry her. So HaKoisev Shtar Eres L'Shivchase, Afal Pisha Amalot, Tz'i Bei L'Cheres, this Kachibe, he knows he's writing her Shtar Eres, and he's Taichazuis, that I want this Shtar Eres to work as a Shtar Shichr, and also as a Shtar Kedushin. Tz'i Bei L'Cheres, use the Shtar Eres for a Shtar Shichr, and also as Kachibe, Ein B'Loshen Hazeh Loshen Shichr, because since it's a Shtar Eresin is not a Shtar Shichr, it can be used as a Shtar Shichr, and therefore Ve'ein Mechudeshes, she's not Mechudeshes, and also V'lei Mishuchreres.